Hey there everyone, this is Samrangi Roy. Ever since I released my first English literature videos on Caedmon, Wolf and Old English poetry and so on and so forth, my comment boxes have been swarmed with my viewers asking me to make a similar video on Beowulf, explaining the poem. So here I am today doing exactly that, and I'm extremely happy that my Dream of the Rood poem was such a major hit. And last day maybe I think I was doing an incognito YouTube search and I saw that it was like trending at number 1, the Dream of the Rood video, that is. So I just typed Dream of the Rood on the search bar and my video was the one that came up right at the top, and that was a great moment for me, to be honest, and that is probably why I've been receiving a lot of comments on that video too, and comments from people asking me to make a video on Beowulf. So here I am, and Beowulf is a poem, like it's not just for people studying English literature but also for people who are English enthusiasts and who would really want to listen to a very old Scandinavian story. So this is going to be interesting. Please do not think that this is only going to cater to students of English literature. If you are interested in listening to a very old Scandinavian story, then you are welcome to listen to this video and also take down notes if you are really that enthusiastic about it. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the story of Beowulf. Beowulf is the most famous Anglo-Saxon epic poem. It was written in the West Saxon dialect. No one knows who wrote the poem. People refer to the poet of Beowulf as the Beowulf poet. And when the poem was written, that too is something that most people do not know. They assume that it was written somewhere between the 700 AD and the 1000 AD, somewhere in between that time period. Many scholars also hold the opinion that it was written between the 900 to 1025 AD. So, there's a lot of ambiguity related to when exactly this poem was written. Nobody is sure about that, but it was one of the, and it still is, one of the most famous Anglo-Saxon epic poems. And today I'm going to tell you the story of Beowulf. I'm going to try my best to explain it to you in a way that is going to be very interesting, and that will also make you remember certain important points and facts about the poem. Now, Beowulf, the poem, begins with the ship burial of a very famous warrior known as Shield Sheafson. Shield Sheafson. Now, you will find different variations of the spelling in different editions, and I would recommend following the Beowulf translation by Seamus Heaney. That's the most famous translation. So you can follow whatever spelling you find in Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf. So it begins with the ship burial of Shield Sheafson. Now, ship burial used to be the way of, treating the dead people, especially famous dead people. What they would do was that instead of cremating them, or instead of just burying them under the earth, they would put the corpse of the dead warrior or the dead person inside a ship and then completely fill that ship with treasures, different kinds of treasures and artifacts, and then they would just leave the ship to sail away in the sea. And then no one knew what happened to the dead body or what happened to the ship. Shield dies in the prime of his life, and Shield's son, whose name was Beow, takes over the empire. And then when Beow dies, Beow's son Halfdane takes over the reign. And then Halfdane has 3 sons, and Hrothgar is one of those 3 sons. So Hrothgar is the surviving son who ultimately rules over the Danes, and in order to establish his power and superiority, what Hrothgar does is he builds this great mead hall, and the name of the mead hall is Heorot Hall. It was a mead hall. Mead was like, an intoxicating drink. There are several recipes of mead available on YouTube. In fact, Dylan Sprouse, brother of Cole Sprouse, he has a brewery of his own where he brews different kinds of meads. So mead was like alcohol, an intoxicating drink. There is honey in mead too, and that used to be a very popular drink back in the Anglo-Saxon days. And warriors and kings and all the people in the court, they used to enjoy drinking mead whenever there was any good news or any wars won. Just for celebration, they used to drink a lot of mead and enjoy themselves. So what happened is Hrothgar was building this very big mead hall, the famous mead hall, which went by the name Heorot Hall. And then what happened is, one day Grendel, who was a local demon, Grendel started raiding the Heorot Hall and killing a lot of people because Grendel did not like celebrations. Hrothgar's people would celebrate a lot in the hall, in the mead hall, that is Heorot Hall, and they used to drink a lot of mead, and there used to be a bard, wandering singers, minstrels, who used to sing about God and all of God's creations, and that is something Grendel could not take because Grendel was supposed to be a descendant of Cain. I hope you know who Cain is. Adam and Eve had two sons, not two sons exactly, many sons. Cain and Abel were their first sons, and Abel was supposed to be a very good person and Cain was supposed to be the stereotypical evil person. Cain murders Abel, and then when asked that where is Abel, he just says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" This is a very famous line, and it's actually Cain who murders Abel, and all of Cain's descendants are supposed to be very evil and powerful demons, and Grendel was one of those demons. And Grendel did not like all of these celebrations that was going on in the Heorot Hall. He did not like the bard singing about God and all of God's creations because, you know, Grendel was demon. Grendel ruled over, not exactly ruled over, but captured Heorot Hall for 12 years. And in spite of Hrothgar sending different warriors from time to time to fight Grendel and take back the ownership of the Heorot Hall, nobody, absolutely nobody could defeat this local monster, Grendel. He was super powerful, nobody could defeat him. So this is what was happening with the Danes. The Danes ruled by King Hrothgar. Now let me quickly add one thing before I continue with the plot of Beowulf, and that is, you know, Beowulf, when Beowulf was written, the Scandinavians, they worshipped pagan gods and goddesses. They were deeply steeped in paganism. And whenever you find mentions of God and creations and Cain, you know, descendants of Cain, everything from the Bible, you'll know those are later interpolations done by the Christian clerks. They did not belong to the original poem because the original poem was inherently pagan by nature. But here we have the Beowulf that we have now. It was heavily interpolated by the Christian clerks, and they, you know, entered stuff about the Bible, biblical facts and references. And at one point of time, the omniscient narrator even goes on to say that these people who were extremely pagan in nature, they started praying to their false gods, pagan gods and goddesses. Thank God we belong to a time where we know the Christian gods. Thank God we know what Christianity is, and our faith lies in Christianity and not those pagan gods and goddesses. So this is something that the narrator intervenes to tell us at one particular point of the poem. So you must remember that it was all a later interpolation. Wherever you find references of Bible, references of God, you'll know they are Christian interpolations, not stuff that belong to the actual poem. Now I've already told you about what was happening to Hrothgar and his mead hall Heorot, which was being, you know, captured by Grendel, the local demon, for 12 years, and he was killing a bunch of warriors every time they went to fight him. But across the sea, across the waters on the other side, lived Beowulf, who was a very famous warrior, and Beowulf was the leader of the Geats. So across the river you have Danes, and on this side of the river or sea you have the Geats, and the king of these Geats were King Hygelac. Hygelac, Hygelac. He was the king of the Geats, and Beowulf was one of his very powerful warriors, and he was celebrated by all the Geat people. So he had, you know, assumed this post or position of the, or a reputation of being the leader of the Geats. So now what happens is that Beowulf's father, his name was Ecgtheow or something like that, Ecgtheow. So Beowulf's father at one point of time owed a favor to King Hrothgar, the ruler of the Danes who lived across the sea. What happened was that Ecgtheow got into some kind of a fight with a particular tribe, and he murdered a person of that particular tribe, and then he ran to King Hrothgar for refuge and safety. And what King Hrothgar had done back then was he paid a lot of money to the family of the dead person in order to solve that whole problem and, you know, absolve Ecgtheow from all blame. So back in those days, this death prize, that whenever you kill someone, you pay a lot of money to the family members and that will end the story there. That won't be taken any further. This death prize was almost like life insurance, you know. So this death prize was used to solve a lot of blood feuds, a lot of fights and battles and wars which otherwise wouldn't have been solved at all, and two tribes would continue to fight against each other. So paying off a huge amount of money for someone's death would solve their problem once and for all. And King Hrothgar had done this huge favor to Ecgtheow, and that is why Ecgtheow was indebted to him forever. And after Ecgtheow's death, Beowulf took over this whole responsibility of, you know, doing something good for King Hrothgar in order to pay back his father's debt. And this is precisely the opportunity that Beowulf was waiting for. The moment Beowulf came to know about how King Hrothgar was suffering because of Grendel, Beowulf saw this as an opportunity to go to King Hrothgar and actually fight and kill Grendel the demon. Now he was not absolutely sure that he would be able to fight and kill Grendel, but he wanted to give it a try because, you know, his father owed King Hrothgar a debt, and as a son it was his responsibility to go and pay back the debt. So that was Beowulf's plan. And likewise, Beowulf went to King Hrothgar with 14 other Geats along with him, Geatish warriors along with him. And then he went to Hrothgar and he told Hrothgar that, see, this is how you owed my father a huge debt, and I have come here to repay your debt. I'm going to kill Grendel. I'm going to fight him and I'm going to kill him and I'm going to rid you and your kingdom of this monster forever. And King Hrothgar obviously was very impressed. He was very happy. He had sent many warriors previously too, and they had all died at the hands of Grendel. He did not have much hope, but he was really happy that Beowulf had come all along from the other part of the sea, the other side of the sea rather, to help him get rid of Grendel the monster. And you know, after listening to all of Beowulf's boasts of bravery and courage and valor, he eventually agreed to let Beowulf fight and kill Grendel. Now Beowulf thought of himself as so brave and so courageous and so strong that he said and he declared that he wouldn't be using any weapon to kill Beowulf. He would be using his bare hands to kill Grendel, the monster. Did I say Beowulf? Not exactly sure. So whatever it is, you get the hang of it, right? He said he would just be using his bare hands to kill the monster Grendel and not any weapon, because obviously Grendel did not use any weapons while he fought with the warriors, so that would be kind of unfair to Grendel. That's why Beowulf said that no, I won't use any weapons, my hands are enough and I'll be fighting and killing Grendel with my bare hands. And that is exactly what he did. He went to the Heorot Hall. Grendel was super disgusted looking at Beowulf and his guts to go up there and fight with him. But Beowulf, the courageous person, the courageous, brave, strong warrior that he was, he actually defeated Grendel in a single combat, alone, without any weapons. Alone, yes. And what he did was that he tore off Grendel's arm from the shoulder. One of Grendel's arm, he tore that off from the shoulder. He was so strong. Oh my god. So anyway, Grendel was completely mortified, and what he did, he just ran away from Heorot Hall. His, arm completely severed from his body. He was bleeding and he ran away to the moors where he lived, and then no one heard of him ever. And then, the usual celebrations followed, drinking a lot of mead and this and that, the king being super in awe of Beowulf, almost falling in love with Beowulf and wanting to adopt him as a son, something like that. And, there was a lot of mead drinking, a lot of singing and dancing in the Heorot Hall. Everyone was back in the Heorot Hall, again, just like before, and they took on the responsibility of rebuilding the hall, because the Heorot Hall was already damaged, like parts of it were already damaged when Beowulf was fighting with Grendel. So some of the Danes, they took up the responsibility of reconstructing the Heorot Hall once again. And there was a lot of drinking, celebration, dancing and singing. The minstrels were coming and singing of different tales and the usual thing. King Hrothgar's wife, whose name was Queen Vitellius, She went around with the goblet, distributing the meat to all the people in the court. This is what was happening basically. The minstrel sings about a particular very brave character called Sigmund the Dragon Slayer, and then he also sings about Queen Hildeburh, the wife of King Finn of Frisians. So the Frisians were another clan, and their king was King Finn, and King Finn's wife was Queen Hildeburh, and their marriage too was like, you know, kind of a compromise, not exactly a compromise. It was like, in those days what used to happen was that if there were two warring tribes or two warring clans, one way to, you know, obviously solve the war would be to pay the death price. That is, if someone was killed or if someone had died due to the actions of the other clan. But there was another way, and that is to marry off one woman from one particular clan to the other clan. Like, this marriage used to unite the two warring clans or the warring tribes. This is exactly what happened with Queen Hildeburh too. Hildeburh, she was married off to, you know, King Finn of the Frisians, and obviously she was not very happy. And even after the marriage, there used to be constant wars between the Frisians and the Danes, constantly. Even though the marriage was carried out in order to bring peace to the two warring clans, the war continued. And what happened was that at one point of time, Queen Hildeburh's own son, obviously who belonged to the Frisians, and Queen Hildeburh's own brother, obviously who belonged to the Danes, both were killed. And she requested that both be cremated side by side. And then obviously the Danes were defeated, and there was one particular Dane whose name was Hengist, who stayed back, and Hengist was not very happy at the outcome of the war. Even though the Frisians had won, and even though the Frisians had allowed Hengist to stay back with them since it was winter and crossing the seas would be very dangerous, what Hengist did throughout that time was, you know, stir up the other Danes into another rebellion with Queen Hildeburh's husband, King Finn of the Frisians. And again they started fighting, and this time Queen Hildeburh's husband too was killed in the battle. So basically Queen Hildeburh lost everyone, son, brother, husband. She lost everyone, and then ultimately what Hengist did was he dragged Queen Hildeburh back to the Danes, where she originally belonged, dragged her back home. Hengist was nobody. Hengist was not related to Hildeburh at all. He was just a very brave warrior belonging to the Danes. That's it. So this was a story that the minstrel was singing about, and this gives us a glimpse into the culture back in those times, the cultures, the norms, the traditions back in those times. And also the story about Sigmund the Dragon Slayer, which I just mentioned, it's like a foreboding about what Beowulf would do towards the end of this whole epic poem. He also slays a dragon, and we'll get to that. So after Beowulf had defeated Grendel, there's this another character in Hrothgar's court whose name was Unferth. And this Unferth character, the moment Beowulf arrived at the court with his mission to kill Grendel, this Unferth character, he had mocked Beowulf a lot. Because according to Unferth, Beowulf was not brave at all, since Beowulf and another character called Breca, they had entered into a swimming contest together, swim across the sea, something like that. And you know, Breca was the one who won the contest. So according to Unferth, Beowulf was not fit to kill Grendel, because that swimming contest, which was a much simpler task, even that Beowulf couldn't win. So how would he fight and kill Grendel? It was completely out of doubt. He wouldn't be able to do that. So this was Unferth's claim basically. But then Beowulf told Unferth that if you are so confident about this, then why don't you go and fight Grendel? If you are so brave and so courageous, then why is Grendel still wreaking havoc to your people and to your king? Why can't you do something about this? And he also gave a reason as to why he couldn't win the swimming contest with Breca, because while he was swimming across the sea, there was this particular sea monster who had held him by his leg, caught him by his leg and dragged him underwater, and Beowulf had to fight 9 sea monsters. By that time, Breca had already swam across the sea and reached the finishing line. I don't know where the finishing line was, but Breca had by the time managed to win the contest. Beowulf could not, because he was busy killing 9 sea monsters. So this is the reason that he gives. So naturally now Grendel has been defeated by Beowulf alone, and that too in a single combat. He defeated Grendel alone. Now Unferth has nothing to say, so he's just being sullen and he's just being mean and he's not happy at whatever has happened, and he basically has nothing to say. He has nothing to say because he was obviously feeling thoroughly ashamed for underestimating Beowulf. So this was the situation of the Heorot Hall. This was what was happening at the Heorot Hall after Beowulf's killing of Grendel. But things are not that simple, especially in the Scandinavian Anglo-Saxon world. What happened in that world was whenever any person or any monster, any creature was killed, someone from that creature's family would come back for revenge. This was also a rule prevalent in that world. So what happened was that right after Grendel was killed, people in Hrothgar's court, they thought that our problems are solved. Oh my god, now we can just drink mead and chill and enjoy. But things were not that simple. Grendel's mother came back for revenge that night. So what happened was that after everyone had gone back to sleep, Hrothgar and Queen Weltia, obviously they went back to sleep, not in the Heorot Hall obviously, but in their private chambers, and all the other people in the court and Beowulf and all the other Geats, they were sleeping in the Heorot Hall as usual. And that night when they were sleeping, completely unaware and unsuspecting, Grendel's mother barges in and kills a bunch of Geats and Danes alike, both Geats and Danes. And then again, the surviving Geats and Danes, obviously, when they start attacking Grendel's mother, she gets petrified and she runs away, and they kind of follow Grendel's mother out of the court. They follow her out of the court, and now King Hrothgar doesn't know anything about this, and he is super upset because he thought that his problems were all over, and now he thinks that maybe he was cursed by some god or some other entity. That is why, so much misfortune had befallen him. Also, what Grendel's mother did was that she killed King Hrothgar's favorite retainer, his counselor, and his name I think is Eschez or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, I don't remember, but anyway, I'll leave the spelling here. And then they follow Grendel's mother to her lair. Grendel's mother lived in a lair. This lair was like this marshy area, a very deep lake in the marsh, and that lake was bottomless. Yes, that lake was bottomless, and it was filled with monsters, different kinds of slimy creatures and reptiles. It sounds like the perfect Lovecraftian utopia to me, slimy reptiles in a lake, and it was a very disgusting sight, especially if you're afraid of reptiles. Obviously, it's going to be disgusting for you to even think of that whole scene, the lair. And they found this lair, and they were also very scared about these lairs because there were so many other monsters there roaming about around the lair, and they were also visible inside the water. But Beowulf, again the hero that he is, he plunges in the lair. And he was just carrying one sword, and the name of that sword was Runting, and it was kind of a lucky sword because that sword never lost any battle. Runting, the name of that sword was, and plot twist, Unferth was the one who gave Beowulf that sword to fight Grendel's mother. Unferth had become very good now, all bummy chummies with Beowulf now and giving him the sword Runting in order to wish him good luck. And Beowulf, just wrapped in a coat of mail, he took that sword and he dived into the lair after bidding goodbye to Hrothgar and all the Danes and Geats. And after saying all of these things and being sentimental and shit, what Beowulf does is he dives into the lair and he follows Grendel's mother. And the moment Grendel's mother spots Beowulf, she drags him to a chamber underwater. This chamber is like one pocket of air underwater, and it's not, obviously, it's like this waterproof glass house deep inside that lake. So that is where Grendel's mother took Beowulf, and they had a really bad fight. All the action scenes coming in, they had a really tough battle, really tough fight. And this time obviously Beowulf was carrying the sword, but what Beowulf discovered was that he could not hurt Grendel's mother with the sword. The sword Runting was completely ineffectual. It could not pierce even the slightest bit of Grendel's mother's skin. So he was almost sure that he's going to die. But that is when on one of the walls of Grendel's mother's, chamber underwater, he saw a very big sword hanging. Like huge heavy sword, the kind that could only be used by giants. So that is what Beowulf spotted, and he tried to get to that sword, and using that sword, he severed Grendel's mother's head completely from her body. And then what he did was that he just walked around that underwater chamber for a while after killing Grendel's mother, and he realized that there were a lot of treasures there. But he did not take any treasure except the hilt of the sword and Grendel's head. Grendel's corpse was also underwater. Grendel's mother had kept Grendel's corpse underwater. So what Beowulf did was that he again went and completely destroyed Grendel's corpse as the last act of revenge, and then he severed Grendel's head, carried Grendel's head and the hilt of the sword, the giant sword, up to King Hrothgar's Heorot Hall once again. And when Beowulf killed Grendel's mother, a lot of blood oozed up to the top of the lake, and all the Geats and Danes and even King Hrothgar thought that Beowulf was dead and that Grendel's mother or the other monsters underwater, they had somehow killed Beowulf, and they all went away except the Geats, because the Geats were loyal to Beowulf. But then Beowulf comes out and the Geats are extremely happy, and it takes 4 of them to carry Grendel's head to King Herod's mead hall. It was so heavy. It took 4 warriors to carry the head. And that is when King Hrothgar was again super happy. He was ecstatic, euphoric, and then he gave another bunch of gifts to Beowulf, lots and lots of gold and wealth and this and that. I mean, I probably have to spend an entire day just naming whatever Beowulf got from King Hrothgar. Not just Beowulf, but also the other Geats who had accompanied him. They all got loads of gifts from King Hrothgar, and King Hrothgar also sent gifts for King Hygelac, Beowulf's king, obviously, the king of the Geats, Hygelac. And then after all of these things, again a lot of celebrations and mead drinking and dancing, this and that. After all of that, Beowulf takes the final leave that now my debt is paid, now I can go back. And what King Hrothgar does is, King Hrothgar hugs Beowulf and cries because he thinks that he will not meet Beowulf again, because he was already old and he was going to die. So maybe in this life he would not get to meet Beowulf again. So Beowulf goes back on that note, back to King Hygelac's kingdom. Then Beowulf goes back to King Hygelac, and King Hygelac's wife was named, I think, Queen Hygd or something like that. And here, Beowulf watches Queen Hygd. She was so good, she was so generous, and in his mind he compares Queen Hygd to Queen Moderith. Queen Moderith was this very evil queen, and anyone who looked at Queen Moderith straight at her face, the queen would, take that person then and there and kill that person. She was so cruel. So Beowulf just makes this mental comparison between the goodness and kindness and generosity of Queen Hygd and the evil Queen Moderith, and then also says that after Queen Moderith married Offa, and if you've been following my Anglo-Saxon videos, then you know who Offa is. Offa, the king of the Angles, do you remember? So yes, Offa. So after Moderith married Offa, Moderith completely transformed, her character completely transformed, and she became very good, and after that she was only known for her good deeds. So then what happened is that he goes back to Hygelac's kingdom, and he boasts about his bravery once again, because back in the Anglo-Saxon world, boasting was a part of the tradition. Anyone who was a warrior, they could just go around boasting about their exploits, boasting about their power, their bravery, their courage, their valor, whatever they've done in course of their lifetime, all their courageous acts and deeds. So this was their right, this was the warrior's right to boast. So then Queen Hygd and King Hygelac, they are obviously super impressed by Beowulf, and what King Hygelac even does after receiving all of those treasures from Beowulf is that he in turn gives him a lot of treasures, lot of gold and wealth, and even makes him the lord of a small empire, gives him the throne of a small empire. And then many years pass, and we get to know from the narrator that King Hygelac is also defeated, and King Hygelac's son, he was very small, so he was not capable, he was not mature enough to take over the kingdom. So Queen Hygd actually went and told Beowulf to take over the kingdom, but what Beowulf did is that he decided to take over the kingdom temporarily, while at the same time guiding King Hygelac's son in order to be mature enough as he grew up to take over the empire, to take over the kingdom and rule it in his own way. However, he also died, and then Beowulf naturally had to take over the empire because there was no one. And Beowulf ruled for many years. He ruled over that empire for many years. He was very strong, and throughout Beowulf's reign, nobody could go and surpass the Geats. Nobody could go and defeat the Geats because Beowulf, the strong warrior, was always for them. But what happened now is that one day there was this one particular cave where a dragon lived, a fire-breathing dragon, dangerous fire-breathing dragon, and that dragon was guarding a treasure. That treasure was left by a wealthy man who did not have any heir. So the wealthy man left the treasure. The dragon one day came across that treasure. He killed the wealthy man and took possession of the treasure, and ever since that dragon has been guarding that treasure in one of the caves. And one day, one slave who had run away from his master, what he did was that in order to go back and be forgiven by the master, he realized that he had done a very bad thing escaping from his master. And he then thought that if I can take back something to him, something very precious, maybe he's going to forgive me. And that is why he went into that cave and he took one golden goblet out of the treasure that the dragon was guarding, and he ran back to his master. And ever since, the dragon has been so angry that he's been going out and breathing fire and killing a bunch of geats every single night. Every day, every night, he's been going out and killing a bunch of geats. And obviously Beowulf, when he heard about it, he knew he had to do something about it because lots of people were dying every day. So he decided that he will defeat this dragon. And Beowulf kind of knew that this is going to be his last act of bravery on this world. He knew that he was going to die while he fought the dragon. He kind of knew about that. And then he goes and he fights the dragon, and 11 Geats also accompany him, 11 Geat warriors, they also accompany him. But the moment they set eyes on the dragon, 10 of them, they run away from there. There's only one who stays, and that one person, his name is Wiglaf. He is very loyal to Beowulf and he stays back. And when Wiglaf sees that Beowulf is almost dying, he cannot do anything, that's when Wiglaf steps in and pierces a sword in the belly of the dragon, and then Beowulf pierces his sword in the side of the dragon, in one of the dragon's sides, thus killing the dragon. So without Wiglaf's help, Beowulf wouldn't be able to defeat the dragon. He wouldn't be able to kill the dragon because he was already mortally wounded by the dragon. And then what happens is Beowulf is mortally wounded and Wiglaf knows that he is going to die. He just tries to wash away Beowulf's wounds and also brings him some treasure from the cave in order to show him that this is what the dragon was guarding. And Beowulf also wants to have one last glimpse of the treasure that he fought the dragon for. And he tells Wiglaf that this was his last wish, that after his death a barrow be built for him, and above his funeral pyre, that is, a big barrow be built, so big that people from the sea, whichever ship came by the sea, they would be able to spot that barrow and they'll know who Beowulf was and why that barrow is built there, commemorating his memory and all of his brave and courageous acts. So this was his last wish, that a barrow be made on his funeral pyre. And when Beowulf died, obviously Wiglaf lashed out at all the other warriors, the Geatish warriors, saying that, see, our leader Beowulf, our king Beowulf, he's always protected all of you, and when he needed protection, when he needed your help, you couldn't do anything for him. So he lashed out at all of the other Geatish warriors who ran away at the sight of the dragon, but now nothing could be done because Beowulf was already dead. And in keeping with his last wish, they actually did whatever he asked for. They loaded the funeral pyre with the treasure that they found in the cave that the dragon was guarding. They loaded it to the top with all of those treasures, and then they set fire to the funeral pyre. And as Beowulf's body melted, the treasure also melted, and after that, on top of that, they built this huge barrow so that the ships coming from the sea, they could see the barrow and they would know that this was built because of Beowulf, commemorating his reign, his rule, and all of his courageous acts of bravery, strength, valor, whatever. So this is exactly what happened. And then obviously Wiglaf also predicts that now that Beowulf is dead, we won't be alive anymore because the Swedes would now come and they are going to defeat us. They are going to take away our kingdom, and there's no one who can protect us because Beowulf was the only person who could have done that. And because Beowulf was here all this time, the Swedes could not dare to come and conquer us. But now that Beowulf is gone, obviously they'll come and they'll conquer us. And this is exactly what happens, and on this note the poem ends with Beowulf's funeral. This is how the poem ends. That's it. That is Beowulf for you. I hope you found this video useful. I hope you found this video helpful. This is just a very brief summary of Beowulf. The poem is basically divided into 3 parts. Fight with Grendel, fight with Grendel's mother, and at last fight with the dragon, and then how it ends. It begins with the funeral of Sheep's son, like I said, ends with the funeral of Beowulf, likewise. This is the whole pattern of the poem. There's this parallelism everywhere between Sheep's son and Beowulf. This is the note on which the poem ends. That's it, that's the poem. I hope it helped jog up your memory of Beowulf, the most famous Old English epic. And I've also kept my promise. I've made the video on Beowulf finally. Let me see if I can carry this forward and make other videos on other Anglo-Saxon works as well, like The Wanderer, Seafarer, and The Wife's Lament, The Husband's Message, and so on and so forth. I shall try to cover them. Yes, so that's it for this video. See you once again in the next video. Till the time we meet next, stay safe, be happy, keep indoors, and keep rocking. Bye!